Hey, what's up, y'all? It's a new season, and we're back and better than ever. Welcome to the first episode of season 2 of D Ruins Film, the podcast for film lovers and haters alike. I know it's been a while. We only had half a season for season 1. Life has been life, and we've been moving through it, but I'm back at it and ready to talk all things film. Before we get into it, let's share D's top 5 for this episode. First, the limited series of His and Hers featuring Tessa Thompson. If you haven't watched it, it's on Netflix. It's brilliant murder mystery, and truly my favorite way to see kind of like the combination of psychological thriller and murder mystery in a genre. I also think that it just is a brilliant way to tell a story, to build character, and the ending is so delicious. It's so delicious and it's so fulfilling and satisfying. And I recommend, if you haven't watched it, move it to the top of your watch list. Get on it. It's especially if you're somebody who is like a true crime girly, if you are a lover again of like the thriller or the murder mystery, if you love Tessa Thompson like I do, this is truly the series that you need to be watching. Two, The Hunting Wives. This is probably a little bit old. I'm going to mention some old ones on here because I haven't had the opportunity to share and discuss these things recently. So there may be things that you've already watched or things that are a little bit like it may seem outdated, but trust me, if you haven't seen them, you need to see them. The Hunting Wives, the first season of The Hunting Wives, is another brilliant series on Netflix featuring incredible talent and lesbianism and just another great example of strong storytelling, character building, all of that. I was truly gripped from the beginning and continue to be gripped by it. I have rewatched it now a couple of times just to study the story of it all and the character building, a master class in character building actually. So I strongly encourage you to watch that. The Housemaid. If you're a horror fan, this is a very good film to watch. I actually watched it on my birthday, treated myself to cinema tickets, and was just like, I need to see something a little bloody. It was not as bloody as I would have liked it to be. There's some gore towards the end if you're kind of squeamish, but it's an interesting, like, psychological mind fuck, as it were. If you can't tell by now or you don't know me, you should probably be able to gather that I love a little psychological mess. I love to write a little psychological mess. I love watching a little psychological mess. I love things to just kind of like mess with your mind a little bit. This is definitely a good film that does that. I think the storytelling is also phenomenal. As someone who watches horror quite a lot, I find it's very difficult in films like these to throw me off the scent as to how it's going to end or what the big reveal is going to be. And I thought I had this figured out at the beginning. When I first watched it, I thought that I had figured out what the situation was going to be at the end, but it was not what I thought at all. And even when I thought that I was getting close to it, something would happen that would kind of throw me off the scent. So if you want a good twisty film, this is definitely one to watch. Bridgerton season 4. I'm already interested, especially in the presence of Michaela and where that's going to go between her and Francesca. We already have quite a ship building there for those of you who are shippers. With the two of them, I'm definitely invested. So yeah, that's number 4. And the last one is Opus, featuring Ayo Edebiri. It is another horror, but I think it's a good look at like cultism and specifically celebrity cultism. So I definitely think it's a good film to watch. There's a little bit of a pacing thing at some point where it kind of like loses a little bit of steam, but Ayo's character is really intriguing, fascinating, and her journey is so like interesting to me. And how she moves through this whole thing that she's uncovering. And the last, like, I would say maybe 20, 30 minutes gets really like packed with interesting and like I wouldn't necessarily say exciting, but like it's more intense, as we're getting to the end. So I highly, highly, highly recommend watching it. So that's D's top five for this episode. If you have watched any of these or end up watching any of these down the line, feel free to hit us up, talk to us in the comments. We love to hear from you, hear your thoughts and your feedback on the things that you're watching as well. If there's something you think I should be watching and talking about, let me know. All right, we're getting back into it after quite the hiatus. So I want to dive right in to our in focus for this episode, which is the Oscar nominations breakdown and overview. My unfiltered thoughts and opinions on the nominations. It's been about a month since those noms were announced, and I obviously had some immediate reactions to some of the things that were nominated, as well as some of the things that were not nominated. I will be very honest. I haven't watched most of the films that have been nominated yet. As I said before, life has been lifing, but I'm trying to get some time to watch more of them. So a lot of my opinions on the nominations are going to focus on what I have watched and my thoughts about those things that got nominated versus those that did not. I don't have a lot of critique outside of that. And once we get more films under our belt, or hopefully as many as possible before the Oscars, as you know, I'll have an episode about the Oscars in reaction to the wins. If you have been following me on Instagram, or you have been, just knowing me in general, you know that this podcast was born from me ranting about Oscar nominations in my Instagram stories. But we have not gotten the chance since this podcast started to really have this kind of reaction. So we're going to do it here. We're going to do it now. It's going to be great. And you get some of my inside thoughts on these nominations, and even maybe some predictions on what I think about how this is all going to go in March, on March 15th. And like I said, I try to watch as many of the Oscar noms as possible, as close to all of them as I can, because I like to come into the actual award show with a more fulsome perspective on the films that are up for grabs, and based on who wins, like feeling like, okay, did this one deserve it? Should have been another one. I like to be able to give like very informed opinions about this. So let's get into it, shall we? So we're going to kind of start with some general overall reactions with some reflections, and then we'll maybe take a little tiny bit of a closer look at some of the discourse that has happened about some of these films and some of the ones that are nominated. And yeah, I'm going to be speaking extensively about Sinners in my next episode, so I'm going to keep my thoughts sort of brief about that. I will be talking about it, but I will keep my thoughts brief about that. But this is just going to be kind of like a general overview based on the things that I've watched and my maybe thoughts and opinions on what I hope at this point, with what I have watched, takes something at least home. So let's start with Sinners. Sinners Sweep, the most nominated film in Oscar history with 16 nominations. I just have to say it's well deserved. Ryan Coogler, take your bow, sir. And I said it back when Sinners came out and I watched it before it left cinema the first time. And I stand by it, having rewatched it multiple times since. This was the best film that I saw in 2025. Mind you, I didn't see as many films as I wanted to in 2025 because I was busy. But of everything that I watched, this was truly the best film that I have seen last year. And those of you who know that I'm an avid Wicked fan are probably surprised to hear that. And I will talk about that briefly in a second. But Sinners for me was like the top tier of filmmaking in 2025. Just creative, like pinnacle in my mind. Like storytelling on point, characters on point, the history that was incorporated on point. And as I said, I have an episode coming specifically dedicated to this film because it means that much to me. So 16 nominations, well worth it. They deserved it. It feels like it felt like such a good way. Like obviously the nominations came before Black History Month, but it felt like such a good way to like lead into Black History Month, a great precursor for celebrating Black excellence and Black greatness. So I know, and I'm not going to talk too much yet about this, but I know there's a lot of mixed feelings about whether or not it will take home anything or a significant number of the awards that it's been nominated for. And I would be highly, heavily, incredibly disappointed if they walk away with 0 wins. If the Academy treats the nominations as if that is the reward, instead of actually rewarding the film for its work. Because if you feel like it is worthy of 16 nominations, then it is worthy of some wins. I'm just going to put that out there. If it's worth, and I'm going to say it again, if it's worth 16 nominations, if it's worthy of 16 nominations, it is worthy of some wins. So I need Sinners to take something home, several somethings home. It's like the year that Everything Everywhere All at Once was out and then nominated. I was like, this film needs to take some stuff home. It needs to walk away with some wins. It deserves it. This is another one for me. Like, this is on par with that, maybe even a little bit more so. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. I just want to start with some general thoughts. Wicked for Good completely shut out. So I'm not going to talk too much about this right now. Like, I'll talk a little bit about it, but maybe in a future episode I'll kind of dig a little bit more deeply into my thoughts on the Wicked franchise, specifically how Wicked for Good kind of fell flat in comparison to Wicked. But I like, as much as and I can say this honestly, like, I did not enjoy film number 2 as much as I enjoyed film number 1. There are parts of film number 2 that I really liked, but if you are familiar with the stage play, you know that Act 2 is the weaker act. If you're familiar at all with the stage play, you know that Act 2 is weaker than Act 1. It just is. The pacing is all over the place. There's not enough development of character arcs in the story in general. We don't get enough of Elphaba and it's her story. Like, there's all kinds of things that I think are not well fleshed out or well handled in Act 2 of the stage play. When you get a film, you get to translate that story to a film format, and you decide to split it into 2 films. You're giving yourself a lot more real estate, right? In my opinion, to develop the story better, to develop the characters better, to correct some of the mistakes and fill in some of the gaps that existed, within the bounds and limitations of the stage play. And I don't think those things were adequately done. And like I said, I'm not going to go too deeply into that in this episode because that's not what it's about. We may talk about it later, but we won't talk about it now. I think there was a lot of things that should have been changed and fixed and more things added in to beef up the story better, especially because it doubles the runtime of the stage play. But at the same time, while I was not as impressed with film number 2 as I was with film number 1, I still firmly believe that there's no reason why the film deserves 0 nominations. There were still a lot of impressive technical things that were happening on that film: the sound, the set design, the VFX, the costuming, the makeup, the hair. All of those things were impressive. A lot of people were employed by this project and really poured their all into it. To me, one of the things that I have to say about the Wicked franchise, that I have to say about a couple of other things, Sinners being one of them, is that to me, these type of films that use a lot of practical effects, practical set building, practical makeup and hair instead of going the CGI route, which, don't get me wrong, I'm not dissing CGI. To me, CGI is still better than AI, like, by a lot, because you're still having artists involved. But, when you think about the roots in the history of filmmaking, and how, like, obviously technological advances can be very great and very helpful in streamlining the process. Uh, but I also think that there's something wonderful and lovely about practical effects, practical makeup, practical hair, practical sets. All of those things are so important, and, like, can make the experience for everyone on set feel much more real and grounded in reality, like you're dropped into a world versus, like, playing against, like, a blue screen or a green screen. And there's plenty of blue screen work happening in Wicked for Good. There's VFX all up and through it, which I also think was very well done. But, like, I just think that these artists deserve to be rewarded and honored, and at least given some nods for their efforts. And I know that there are people that will argue, well, they got it in film one. But the thing about it is like film two took a different turn and like had a whole different set of, you know, all of these things. Elphaba's makeup changed quite a lot. The costuming changed quite a lot. You have the tree house, you have Kiamako, you have Glinda's apartment. Like all of these things are different from what we saw, and it's a grittier film than we saw in the first film. So to me, they deserve to be honored and respected for those as well. And I'm going to try not to go off about this, but I think that both Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande deserve nominations for their acting work. Quite frankly, I would love to have seen them not just get nominated but win, because I think Cynthia, first of all, deserves to take something home for her work with Elphaba. I think she was so incredibly intentional with the character and the character building. Same with Ariana and Glinda. Like listening to both of them talk about their processes, talk about how they really immersed themselves in character, how they studied and prepared for these roles. There's a lot of effort and work that was put in, and like they didn't win last year, and a lot of people were saying you got to see the whole story, you got to see everything come together, and obviously yes, act two and part two ended up being weaker and not giving enough compared to what it should have in this regard. But I think if we're supposed to be judging the whole story, then we have to judge the whole character arc. And I think issues with the plot aside, the character development for both is strong, and there is a lot of clearly intentional acting choices being made by both. The level of emotionality that has to be put into what they're doing, the range of emotionality, the way that we see nuance in their expressions, all of those things deserve to be, at least given some sort of praise. So I'm disappointed that Wicked got shut out of the Oscars. And it's not just because I'm a Wicked fan, it is truly from a perspective of like, there are key things about Wicked for Good that still deserve respect and honor and praise. So, some controversial entries, not necessarily bad controversial in every instance, but like based on the conversations that I've seen and just based on what I know and all of that, I think these are some controversial entries. First of all, Song Sung Blue getting a nomination. Kate Hudson getting a nomination for Song Sung Blue when the film hadn't been out very long is just interesting. And I know that, you don't have to have the film be out for like the whole year for it to be Oscar qualifying, but just the idea that she got a Best Actor or Actress nomination for the film and Cynthia Erivo got nothing for Elphaba is just, yeah. Weapons. So I watched Weapons. I was kind of underwhelmed by it. I watched it after it had been, nominated, and after it had been nominated for several awards and even won a couple of those awards. Amy Madigan. So I just want to say this. This is no disrespect to Amy Madigan. I think she's a phenomenal actress and, deserving of recognition for her work. I just don't think it was this film that she deserved the recognition for. And it's not because she didn't do a good job. Like, I think she did a good job, but it's like she wasn't really doing something impressive, in my opinion, with her character. Like, it was, she was a quirky old lady who was also witchy and like all of that. And, I think she definitely vacillated between the like, oh, I'm just a silly old lady who, what do I know? To like really kind of villainous very well. But it wasn't like drastic enough for me. And having, as an aficionado of the horror film genre and having watched a lot of horror films and watched a lot of women play either villainous characters or darker characters or like characters who end up being possessed or things like that, like it's not like her performance is not on the same level as other like horror film girls that I have seen before. It's not to say that she didn't give good performance. Again, it's just like, is it worth the Oscar nomination? I don't know. One Battle After Another. This film has been discussed ad infinitum, specifically amongst Black folks, and I understand why, and I'll talk about it a little bit more because I do have some thoughts about it. My one controversial take about this nomination is that Tiana Taylor shouldn't have been the one nominated for Best Supporting Actress. And I'm not trying to be a hater, it just is what it is. She was in it for, I mean, obviously, runtime doesn't necessarily factor into these things, but she was in it for such a short period of time. And I guess her character's impact was felt throughout the narrative, which is important. I don't think it should have been her. Like, I've seen better from her, performance wise. And obviously, they're judging what they have in front of them for the most part. Let's not pretend that we don't have like legacy nominations and awarding happening. But like, obviously they're looking at the current piece and making decisions based on that. And I don't think that like, you know, this was like the performance that deserved an Oscar nom. I think it was all right. Like, I think getting some of the nominations that it did, Chase Infinity definitely deserved one. Leo deserved one. Benicio deserves one. Quite frankly, I think Regina deserves Best Supporting Actress nomination. But yeah, Tiana wasn't giving me enough for me to feel like she deserved that Oscar nomination. Now, it's probably not for the same reasons that other people might have issue with her nomination, but to me, it's like I look at especially when I'm looking at the category more holistically. She's up against Wunmi, and I think Wunmi is more deserving of it. For her role in Sinners. Anyway, one thing I will say that I really am appreciative of and grateful for coming into this Academy Award season is more horror representation. We're seeing more of it. Last year I was very happy to see like The Substance really being a strong contender in in the Oscar race. And so I think that it kind of opened the doors for a little bit more consideration and taking horror more seriously. We've got Frankenstein, we've got Weapons. Both of those I haven't seen Frankenstein yet, but I think like both of those being in the running, not only in the running, but also strong contenders for their categories, I think is just very, very good and very exciting for me. And of course, we know I love Guillermo del Toro. So I'm excited to watch Frankenstein. It's like next up on my queue. And we'll see how I feel about it in regards to like, does it deserve certain wins or not? We'll see. I want to bring up the K-pop Demon Hunters, best song thing. I think it's probably going to take, if I have to predict anything right now, I think it's going to take best animated feature for sure. And probably, to be honest, based on how things have gone this award season, I think it will also take best song. I maybe have more of a controversial opinion about the Golden being the song of choice that was nominated. I obviously heard it everywhere before I ever saw the film. And like it got to the point where it was just like it's one of those where you hear it so much you're just kind of like enough already. I felt like it was like back in my retail days. That's how much I've heard it everywhere. That I was just like when I worked in a retail store, you hear the same songs over and over again. And I think like it felt like that to me and it just got to the point where I was like, no, enough. So when I finally sat down and watched the film, I wasn't necessarily like dreading it because I had heard good things about the film, but I was just like, this song has been everywhere and I'm not sure that I really want to hear it again. But like in the context of the film, it's fine. But in my opinion, this is what it sounds like. The last song that they sing together is the better song and should be the song that got nominated and got put up for nomination. And I think you know, I have feelings about the idea of these songs, these best original song in a film being like centered on like how it charts or like the metrics and streams or whatever being like a considering factor in that because to me we're honoring film work and we're honoring storytelling and the creative process of filmmaking and of course these songs are part of that process as well. However, I think that if we're giving honor to the stories that are being told and the storytellers that tell them, then the song choices that should be nominated should be the ones that drive the story the best. And I think this is what it sounds like encapsulates the whole point of what K-pop Demon Hunters is about and the message that it's trying to convey. And I think that like Golden is just a earwormy song that everybody can sing along to. It's very catchy and easy to memorize and like dance along to. But this is what it sounds like. I feel like is the stronger song. So I'm already pretty much prepared for it to beat Sinners out in regards to like I Lied to You. I Lied to You, I feel like tells the story of Sinners so well. It deserves to win, in my opinion. But I think Golden's going to take it just because it's earwormy, it's catchy, and it's been everywhere. So that's my little hot take about that. Categories that I will be watching closely as I'm like going through these films. Best director for sure. I'm looking at Ryan Coogler with great desire for him to make history, which is sad that we have to say that in 2026 because no black director has won the nomination. And we still have no black women directors nominated in the category, might I add. But I need him to make history. Like, I think he deserves it compared to everyone up there, but we'll see. Best supporting actor, I'm definitely watching closely. I would love Delroy Lindo to take it home. I don't think it's going to happen. I would love for Miles Catton to take it home, but I don't know if that's going to happen either because, like I said, the Oscars, the Academy, the folks within it like to honor and recognize these films to a certain degree. And, like, not much more. I'm also watching the Best Supporting Actress category very closely because I think Winnie really deserves it. I don't know if she's going to take it though. And I think if anybody black takes it, it's probably going to be Tiana, which is going to disappoint me a little bit because, like I said, I don't think it even should have been her nomination. But that's my controversial hot take about that. Now, to get a little bit more granular, and I kind of already touched on some of this, but I want to emphasize it. We'll talk about Sinners first. These are not like hard, fast predictions because, again, I haven't seen everything or most of the things yet. So I'm trying not to like speak with like full on authority that it's going to be this way or not, or it's more likely to be this way or not. But one of the things that I'm thinking about is like, will Sinners take anything home? My hope is a sweep would be ideal. I don't think a sweep will happen. But like I said, I'd really settle for Ryan Coogler taking Best Director and then seeing some acting wins come out of it. Is it going to happen? I don't know. I truly do not know. My fear is that they will get shut out because history shows that black films do not get the love they should in these spaces, and that it's kind of treated like we should be grateful for the little bit of recognition that we do get. Like, well, we nominated you, we put you up, so what more can you say? I hope that if it doesn't take any of the big ones, that it at least takes some technical ones. I think original score is a high contender because that one has been kind of winning throughout award season in other spaces. Original screenplay is also a strong contender because it's taken home some wins as well. I would love to see Ruth Carter take home yet another Oscar. Since we couldn't get Paul Tazwell nominated for Wicked, I would love to see Ruth take it. But, I do fear a shutout. I do fear that, like, 16 nominations is going to put Sinners on, like, the top of the hater list, to be honest. And that they're going to, like, intentionally shut them out. That voters are going to intentionally choose other things, even though I think, again, Sinners was probably the best film that I saw in 2025. And that's just the long and short of it in regards to that. Is one battle after another? Let's talk about it. Is one battle after another really as bad as everyone is saying? So I didn't see one battle after another until the top of this year. And as I started racking up nominations, I was like, this is probably going to get some Oscar nods. So let me go ahead and watch it because I just have a strong feeling that we're going to see, this one on the list. And I was not wrong. I had not really been against watching it, but I hadn't felt drawn to watch it because I had seen a lot of the chatter about it. And even people that I knew were talking about it and not really very fond of some of the tropes that they thought were being explored and some of the ways that characters are being portrayed. And there was comparison to like Halle Berry and Monster Ball. And I was just like, do I really want to go down that road again? Do I really want something like that to be what I'm consuming? But obviously, when you think something is going to be nominated, you go for it. So I did. I went for it. I will say, when I was watching it at first, the first hour was a bit questionable to me. I recognized it as satirical, but I was just kind of like a little slightly concerned about where it was going to go because it felt like some of it was very veering into almost stereotypical territory. and I wasn't sure what the story was going to become. I wasn't sure what was unfolding and how this was going to go. Um, I kind of went into this pretty blind. I didn't, look up anything other than like what people had been kind of saying online is what I had seen, but I hadn't really seen a lot about the story, the plot, or any of that. So I didn't really know what to expect. And so the first hour was a little bit like, hmm. But I also recognized immediately that it's satire. And so the way that characters are portrayed, the way that the story is being told, even from the beginning, is supposed to be poking fun at some things. And it became even more apparent as the film went on and the story started to develop a little bit further. I was like, oh yes, this is satire. So what I took away from it is that it's supposed to be criticism of both revolutionary types who are more performative compared to those who are not, and also making fun of like right wing racist white men, basically. So, from the revolutionary perspective, I think there's commentary being made about being what it means to be organized and what it means to, be an activist, what it means to really do the work. Like, there's some folks who are like clearly in it for the fame, the glory, the recognition, the thrill. They like the high of it, and you can see that play out. And you can see that there's people who like claim to be principled in their stances, but who don't really stick behind their principles when it really matters. And that I think is very obviously being called out as well. And I know a lot of people think that it is just generally making fun of the left in a way that is not, helpful or fun or savory. But if you pay attention, there are examples of principled, well organized community leaders engaging in activism who are much more effective in the work that they're doing because it is centered in community. And to me, the most obvious example of this that we see is Benicio's character juxtaposed with Leonardo DiCaprio's character. Leonardo DiCaprio's character is supposed to be like part of this little revolution, the French 75, this revolutionary group. They have all of these networks and this, that, and the third, and their passcodes and all of that. And the scene where Leonardo connects with Benicio and is in his home as Benicio is trying to like help get people out of like people who are using his space as like a safe zone, undocumented people were using his house as a safe zone. He's trying to get them out because, the equivalent of basically ICE, well, actually was ICE, is coming, ICE is coming, to raid. And so he's like calm, measured, you know, there's a system in place. There's clearly like point people and places that they plan to go. They have like protocols for how they handle this. He comes in, he immediately does what he needs to do, and Leonardo's character is just like all over the place. He's just like frantic, panicked, can't get it together, can't remember the passcodes, can't like figure anything out because he has not been principled about it. He has not been organized. He has not been really reading into what he's supposed to be doing. And it kind of goes to show like this whole commentary of like those who are in it for glory, recognition, the thrill, those who are in it because they think it's cool and it makes them cool versus those who are really about that life. And I think there is a difference. There is a difference between those who are principled and really about the work that they're doing and have been steady and stable and consistent in their organizing work compared to those who are just like, yeah, let's burn it all to the ground without any like thought or plan. Like sometimes burning it all to the ground is required, but there's usually tactic behind that. And there's a lot of people who come into these spaces wanting to be revolutionary, who don't read, who don't study, who don't do the work that needs to be done in the long term. And they just want quick action right now without really thinking about or considering what that takes and what that means. And so like to me it's not just making fun of like organizers and activists and like people on the left. It's making fun of those on the left who are not actually really about that life. And then of course it is dragging conservative, right-wing, racist men, white men, who absolutely cannot stand in their own principles too. Like you have Sean Penn's character who like is just a nasty, nasty racist man who is sleeping with or has slept with and impregnated a black woman. You know, he can't keep it in his pants because he finds her attractive despite also hating her. And so I think like that like that is very obvious to me. So to me it's not really just one thing or the other. People are talking about the Jezebel trope with Tiana Taylor's character, and I don't really think that applies here. She's not subservient to that man. She's not like just throwing pussy around. Like, yeah, she's reckless. Yeah, she's unhinged. Yeah, she's a loose cannon. But I don't think that she really is a true Jezebel. It's just like people saying that Wunmi's character in Sinners is a mammy. I think what people really are struggling to unpack with Tiana Taylor's character is they're uncomfortable with the idea of black women really capitalizing on fetishization that white men have. Like, you know, these men are drooling all over her. These white men specifically are drooling all over her, and it's in different ways. Like Leo's character has a fetish, but it's in a different way than Sean Penn's character has a fetish. And she takes advantage of both, to be honest. And I think like that makes people a little uncomfortable. She's using those things for her gain. And so they want to label her a Jezebel, but she doesn't just exist to be a Jezebel. Um, yeah, she might be a little bit more sexually open in this, but like I don't think that that's even really the focus. I also don't think she has enough screen time to like make her experience with sleeping with white men like that much of like a Jezebel kind of thing. So those are my thoughts on One Battle After Another. I definitely would love to hear yours if you've seen it. Yeah. So I talked a little bit about more horror in the building. I will say, you know, from the weapons perspective of it, like I did think that weapons, the idea was creative, but I don't think the execution was strong. But like, I'm not upset at seeing, again, more horror represented in film. I think we need it represented in these spaces. The Academy has not really taken it seriously as a genre in the past, so I'm liking that we're seeing more of it, and I hope that that trend continues. As far as what's not represented, because you know I always have to have that conversation when talking about the Oscars. Once again, there's so many black films that we're not seeing getting the love that they deserve and the recognition that they deserve in these spaces. And I have had many a conversation beforehand, and I'm going to save an in-depth conversation about this for later, maybe after we've seen the Oscars and we find out who wins. But I think like it's really, maybe it's Black History Month, so I'm gonna say it. It's important, like black people, we really need to find a way to build our own table in our own spaces. And I know that we have our own awards that we give out, but we need to really focus on making our own award spaces be just as prestigious and serious and upheld in our own community, as the Oscars are in general in the film community, because we keep looking to them to validate us and they're not going to. Like they will give us just enough to keep us quiet and keep rewarding white mediocrity. And I'm just gonna call a spade because some of the stuff that gets nominated, some of the stuff that wins is in fact mediocre. So they're gonna keep nominating those things and keep giving love to those things. And we're gonna keep getting table scraps because we keep accepting table scraps. And I think it is high time that we pack up our bags and get our own house. You know what I'm saying? It's time for us to get our own house, our own spaces, not just to tell our stories, but to honor and uplift our stories in a way that is seen just as, you know, highly and prestigiously as something like the Oscars. That may get me into trouble if somebody hears this, but I have to say it because I think it's important. We got to build our own. We got to build our own table, you know? So, anyway, that's my thought on the nominations this year. I'm definitely looking forward to how this all pans out. I'm going to watch my films that I need to watch and try to watch as many of them as possible so that I can have a full, well rounded opinion on how this all pans out in the end. And after the Oscars, I will have an episode dedicated just to my thoughts on who won and who didn't win. So, yeah, fingers crossed that the ones that I really want to see win do actually win. But we'll see. We'll come back in a few weeks and find out for sure what happened. Moving on to the creative spotlight. We're coming close to the end, y'all. I'm really excited. You may or may not have seen the Harper's Bazaar article with Michaela Coel where she teases a new series, and like not many details were given, but she teases a new series that she's writing, producing, and starring in again. And we love to see it. We love to hear about her being back, not just on our screens, but like in the writer's room and, you know, in the decision making position as an executive producer for television. The show is going to be called First Day on Earth. It is going to have 10-hour-long episodes, which exciting. If you're not familiar with her work, Chewing Gum, I May Destroy You. I'm telling you right now, get familiar. I May Destroy You comes with a trigger warning for sexual assault, but it is excellent. It is an excellent series. It's hard at points to get through, but it is an excellent series. And she just did an excellent, excellent job writing what needed to be written. Chewing Gum is funny. And it's her first piece, her first big piece out there. It's so good and it's so hilarious. It's very British, but it's also very good. Like I said, there's not many details about this series yet, outside of the fact that the woman is a writer and she's going to visit her estranged father. It's filming in Ghana, and I just love it. I love that this is happening. I love that she's working on this, and I really cannot wait until it is ready to be out there and seen by all. This is Black History for real. We are seated and sat to watch and celebrate and support. Love to see it. Love, love, love to see it. All right. And lastly, our takeaway key question for the episode. What does it mean to have integrity in the art we make? How do we make art that isn't just in service to making money or that is unethical in the way that it's created? I've talked about this before. You know, we've had conversations about the AI debacle and how AI was, you know, starting to kind of creep into the industry more, especially on the heels of some of the Oscar noms and wins last year. However, you know, AI is becoming much more prevalent in our society. People are like really accepting and integrating it into their day to day. And it's just become such a casual part of things in a way that is alarming to me personally because of its environmental impacts, its impacts on Black and Brown people, its, you know, issues with creative theft and all of that and other things that are going on as well. But I think, like, especially in spaces like these, we risk losing, like, people are going to lose their jobs over this. They're going to not be able to work as consistently behind AI usage and incorporation in the cinematic arts. And I think the question for us, you know, as it becomes more prominent in these creative spaces and more people are leaning on it to make life easier in the filmmaking space, especially, how do we avoid the temptation to lean on it? How do we avoid the temptation to lean on tools that are harmful in service to our own ease? You know, one of the things that I love about filmmaking is that it requires a level of grit. Like you got to be committed, you got to dig in. There's a lot of problems that have to be solved, there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle that have to be put together in order to make a good film. Really, just to make a film in general, it doesn't even have to be good. It still takes a lot of effort even to make a bad film, which is why I want people to be dedicated to making a good film, because why invest all of that time, energy, and effort and money into making something only for it to be terrible? But regardless, it takes a lot. It takes a lot to make a film. And so I get that people want to streamline the process, save money, make it easier, whatever. But how do we avoid that temptation when we know that the tools that we're using are unethical and harmful and not necessarily good for us, for the environment, all of that? my philosophy is making art is truly a deeply human experience, and it has to come from a human place to really have any meat to it, to really have any soul. I don't think AI will ever be able to replace that, no matter how well trained it becomes, no matter how prevalent it becomes. I don't think AI will ever be able to replicate the humanity that exists in art. And so we like creating something that lacks soul and lacks humanity feels pointless, even if it is easier to do it that way. And I frankly don't think we should want AI to replace the humanity and the soul that comes from making art ourselves. We should always want our hands to be in it. Always. So, anyway, if you have thoughts on this matter, I'd love to hear it, even if they're opposing thoughts and opinions to mine. I love a good discussion, and I love to be able to discourse about these things. I think what makes us better as people and helps us to grow and learn and make better informed decisions is being able to challenge each other. You know, not always having to see on the same side of things and be on the same side of every issue, but being able to consider all sides and still come to a conclusion that, like, this is how I feel about this subject. I think that sharpens us and makes us better people and makes us more intelligent people. So, yeah, of course, hit me with your thoughts. I'd love to hear them. Anyway, that's all for season 2, episode 1. That's a wrap. Thank you so much for engaging with it and listening to all the things that I've had to say here. I, of course, would love to hear your thoughts and your feedback on all of this as we move forward. And in a couple of weeks, I'll be dropping another episode about Sinners specifically. And then the next episode after that should be about the Oscar wins. So, anyway, I hope you enjoy. If so, let us know in the comments. Save the podcast anywhere that you're listening. And see you next time.